ladies and gentlemen. This is Claudia Monticelli with another episode of my podcast called Multiple Voices. And today I've had the good fortune of having Jason Skeesick back with us. Jason, please say hello once again.
I am so excited to be back, Claudia. Thank you.
I was very happy and lucky to have him back. Why? Because after we stopped recording the last episode, I realized that there was much more to talk about, and it wasn't at all finished. It had just begun, and we just scratched the surface. So what are we going to talk about today? Today, I'll just get a line out of a description that he wrote for me about himself. And he wrote, "I am an entrepreneurial evangelist." And of course, that got us talking about spiritualism, which it wasn't in this context. But I said, well, it would be nice if we could talk spirituality. And that's what we're here for. Why? Because he's a high energy person. And for the life of me, forever, I have always said, love is energy, spirituality is energy, ghosts are energy, poltergeists are energy, everything is energy. And I thought it would be interesting for us to talk about energy. If you don't mind, would you, since you have spanned so many different, from being in the army to today and your podcasts, your entrepreneurial endeavors, and all of the rest that we spoke about in the last episode, would you mind talking about a very personal topic, your spiritual beliefs?
Of course, I would love to. Well, so for me, I grew up traditionally raised in a Lutheran household, and I certainly, especially from
excuse me if I interrupt, because when you say Lutheran household, we have an international audience, and not very many people know what that is. What would that be?
So Lutheran is a branch. Yeah, so Lutheran is a branch of Christianity that's very similar to Protestantism. So you look at John Luther was the one that created Protestantism by posting those 12 things on the church door of the Catholic Church, and essentially there's a small difference that I couldn't enumerate for you at this moment between those religions.
So however, that's where your family had that was their religion, let's say.
That's right. But from a very young age, and just thinking while you were talking about this intro, I was thinking about where did this seed start? And from a very young age, I always remember, and I mean too young, like to where teachers would get annoyed, where I'd say, well, what's at the end of space? And they would say, well, there's just more space. And I say, okay, cool. What's at the end of that? And I think that those big concepts and ideas, I'm a seeker and infinity, right? Thinking about things like infinity and the different types of infinity. There's infinity out, there's infinity in, right? And so because of that, I've always been someone who tries to think very deeply about what I believe to be kind of cosmic or big picture ideas.
Why I brought this topic up is because we sort of scratched the surface the last episode and spoke about the tribe, because you use that word a lot, building tribal communities. And that's quite a concept, because religions talk of the family and not necessarily an extended family. What is your idea? I know you have a daughter. How old is your daughter?
She's Lucy is 17 months old.
Oh, cute. That's a perfect age.
She's
perfect age.
Yeah.
Close to the terrible twos, but
yeah, we're getting there. Yeah. Well, I can jump in and explain my concept of tribes. So
sure.
I think potentially, and this is a little circuitous, but I think potentially part of the reason I feel this way is because I grew up in a small, kind of self-contained house. I don't have a big extended family, but I always found myself in team sports and then in the military with a very hardworking, very difficult job, with very great cohorts, very, very great comrades, I guess.
Comrades, right.
And then ever since leaving the military, the thing that I have sought out is to be shoulder to shoulder with brothers and sisters who I really, not the family that I was born with, but the family that I choose.
Extended. Yeah.
Exactly. And so because of that, when I think about tribe, especially in a time where churches are pretty empty, and that's neither good nor bad, in my opinion, I'm just saying that we don't as a unit, as a country or as a world, we don't as often identify with a rallying cry of a church. And so there are these pockets of ethical systems where you can find sort of virtuous models in sort of what is that term, non-religious ways. You see this in yoga, you see this in things like fitness, like CrossFit. You see this in masterminds for entrepreneurs, you see it in social clubs. And so for me, I am at my best when I am in support of a group of like-minded individuals.
As you speak, I always like to little scratch more and more. It's obvious that life includes both the good and the bad. I mean, that's what life is, right? And spirituality is all about light and darkness, or there's the opposites that are inherent in everything we do. That's life, right? Now, when you speak about the tribe and creating a group of people that you could work with, it just came spontaneous to me to ask you, but surely, Jason, you must have had experiences in your life where those people who you thought or considered your brother or brothers turned you down or just let you down. And how did you deal with something like that?
I think that because this definitely has happened. I think high school football comes to mind. I never quite fit in that locker room. And I desperately wanted to, Claudia. But what I think, if anything, that it did was it taught me to be selective of which tribes I chose to become a part of or start. And so now as a grown-up, and for many years before now, I don't open myself up to brotherhood and sisterhood and camaraderie and fellowship with the environments that I don't authentically believe strongly in. If I don't behave or act or have predilections in alignment with a tribe, it's actually my fault for trying. I am the sliver in the finger of that tribe. It's gently rejecting me. And so what I've found is, first of all, that when I've built tribes, particularly in the CrossFit space, we made damn sure that these were inclusive tribes, not exclusive tribes. But whenever possible, I try to surround myself with people who want more is more and are giving first and lead with service. And those types of organizations, again, I'll mention yoga, I'll mention, fitness, I'll mention other places like that, the military, from the inside, not necessarily the outside. I think those are places that are supportive and that welcome in outsiders, not reject them like slivers.
I'm going to ask you a couple of questions that might be off the wall, might feel
off
the wall. All right.
I love it.
I'm a third generation member of the occult. I grew up with stories that my father used to tell me of three-legged tables, and the table would rise off the floor. I swear to you, put his hand on my head. In the military, it usually starts there from so many recounts that have been given to me from people. Have you ever had any experience similar to, let's say, an out-of-body experience or a near-death experience, or some kind of, have you seen ghosts or experienced the energy of a poltergeist, anything that was out of the ordinary like that?
I'm not sure if this qualifies, but I have had what people refer to as ego death from psilocybin, from psychedelic mushrooms.
Okay. Let's go there. Yeah. And what is the drug? What is the substance?
So psilocybin mushrooms, which is a naturally occurring mushroom that has psychotropic effects. I have had an experience of putting down what I would call my ego or my identity and revealing sort of what I would call like the veneer of civilization to see the world as maybe it would be if we didn't think like humans. And so I felt a very connected, in a very literal sense, to sort of everything and everyone around me. And it's one of those things, Claudia, where it's not like I learned it. It's not like I thought it. It's like I always knew it.
Happened.
And it happened. It was real in that sense. Yeah.
And have you had many experiences like this where they varied? They varied. Once it was like this, another time it was in a different way.
That's exactly right. I've had some that were more, and I don't think that's it. First of all, this is not fun. This is not a party. This is not me, having a great time. This is me contemplating my place in the
Right,
universe,
right.
spiritually. And so it's important that I say that. But yes, certainly there have been varying degrees. Most recently, for my 40th birthday, I went to Las Vegas, and
Mhm.
I had what I would call like a much more mild, but almost a historic experience of seeing that place for what it actually is,
Mhm.
which is sort of the world's decadent center, which would almost be identical. I was sitting in Caesar's Palace, and I was overcome with the fact that minus the electricity, this exact scene would have
Mhm.
existed 2,000 years ago.
Mhm.
With these exact people, I saw an African man, big giant African guy guiding his beautiful mother through the crowd. And I saw these Russian guys walking through with their chests all out and people scurrying around to serve everyone. And it just occurred to me in that moment that the human experience really doesn't change much over eons. It's much more the stories we tell ourselves and sort of the mediums that we see things.
Mm. What's, as you speak, of course, I see the picture, then you lead with your words and I'm visualizing something. But
Yeah.
then, something emerged, your experience with finance and your degree in finance. And, it's sort of a mixed bag here. And for those of us like me who just, you know, I count with my 10 hands and I put my money in a bag. And when it's done, I could just
Yeah.
get some more,
Sure.
I grew up in a time when we would say in Italian, we would say, well, money is like your nails. You cut your nails, they always grow back,
Yeah.
not so today. But there is, and I've learned, and I have learned to, it was something I didn't know, the idea of money as a medium and finance is a highly spiritual medium. And one of the ways we can explain that is that money is also the language of love for many people.
Yeah.
And what made you go into finance?
Well, I was probably misguided in why I went into finance, but I'd like to address what you just said.
Yeah,
And that
sure.
is, you don't think about the food that you eat and you don't think about the blood coursing through your veins on a
Right,
very literal level, but these things are happening. There
right.
are millions of things, millions of decisions that your body is making unbeknownst to you. And so biology is the language of the human experience in body form. And what I would
Right.
say is finance is the language of a business or problem solving or a community in its biological
Right.
form. Does that make
Uh-huh.
sense? And so
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah,
where the
yeah. Okay.
connection is much more, it's much less literal about pieces of paper or digits in a computer, and it's much more about where we choose to put our effort, where we
Yeah.
choose to store what we've
Mhm.
earned through hard work, and who we choose to give finances to. This is none of these higher order things are the reason why I went into finance. I went into
Mhm.
finance because I got out of the military and I thought that's how you become a millionaire. And I very and I
Yeah, I
and
hear
I
you.
very quickly learned that that was not for me. I very
Yeah,
quickly learned
yeah.
that I wasn't moved by the markets and I wasn't moved by monies for money's sake.
So go back to your daughter. Now you have
Oh,
a responsibility. Okay, like I have children too, and it's and you never think about it when it happens, and then of course the children are born, and then all of a sudden they're in a school, um and there's decisions to make, and at least in Italy they had part of the language, in grammar school, there was an hour a week for religion, and
mm,
at my time when my children were young, we could choose to have them do something else. And that's what we did. Except there were 3 or 4 out of 26 who did something else, and they always felt left out.
mhm.
What happens today for your daughter? I mean, how do you go? Would you have that pressure? Or would you have an idea of how you go from bad to good to God to nothingness, or the sky, the moon, and what's up there and what's beyond there? Do you have an idea, or are you waiting for her questions?
No, we're very much thinking about these very big
Oh,
questions
mhm.
already. And I don't necessarily have an answer yet, but
Yeah, sure.
I can sort of propose the frameworks that my wife and I look at it in, and
Yeah.
that is my daughter should be exposed to the world as it is.
Right.
which means that she will be exposed to Islam and Christianity and Hinduism and Buddhism and all of the other isms in the world, Judaism certainly, and more than telling my daughter what to do, I would
Yeah.
much rather teach my daughter how to impact the world in a way that is conducive to her. And so if that means that she identifies with Islam or Christianity or Kantism, or like some sort
Yeah.
of an ethical system, well, I would encourage that. What I mostly want to teach her is the language of bringing ideas in, synthesizing them together, and then coming back out with a unique point of view. That has been the thing that has taken me further than any one ism.
Mm-hmm. Again, as you were talking, I visualized my things in my mind and what I'm going to say. I'm more convinced, one, of the validity for you to take notes in any form that you see fit for several avenues of volumes to publish, and two, to rethink the notion of tribe, building tribal communities. And I don't, for your context, and just hear me out. I'm just talking, it seems to me that I come across a few different types of people. One of them are way up there. They don't have their feet on the ground. They are in the heavens. They want to know what's going to happen. They're too high up for a human to be. All right, that's one. Another type of person is, for the type of work that I do, another type of person is they have their feet on the ground and they go into their higher self and into the other realms to get answers that they need. And then the third kind of person who just is feet on the ground, boots on the ground, and there's nothing up there. Okay. I wanted to ask you if you could possibly benefit in the type of work that you do by adding some kind of a spiritual component, in the sense, I'll give you an example. This is a stupid example. First gathering or first group or first one-to-one meeting, when you talk about core values, and of course core values have to do with things you feel, how you sleep at night, what you think when you dream, that, and those, your core values almost always, am I right in saying that they have a spiritual base?
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I think spirituality, like a lot of words these days, is probably maligned, or certainly misunderstood. So if you're listening to this, based on my understanding of spirituality, core values is huge about that. And it's very much a personal thing, and you get to manifest those core values in a way that you find to be palatable and that you like.
When you talk about core values with the people you deal with, has anyone ever come up with something that has completely surprised you?
Yes, definitely.
Yes.
Multiple times.
Would it be a terrible thing to ask you to give us an example?
Well, not a terrible thing. Of course, I'll give you some examples.
Okay. Don't give us the name. We just want an example.
So a couple of examples would be, I have someone who was very connected with swimming and being in the water. He had grown up as a lifeguard and as a champion swimmer. And so one of his core values was trial by water. And I just loved that so much because trial by fire is something that has a very strong connotation, so everybody can understand it.
Right.
But trial by water, which is his preferred way of going through struggle, trial by water to me was so powerful because I immediately knew who he was without any additional explanation. Another great example would be, I have a friend who is very much sees himself as a lion. He was a bodybuilder and he's a big, strong guy, but he also is kind of mild until he needs to come out of his cave, if that makes sense. And all of his core values, he was able to beautifully create this tapestry that all kind of illuminate this metaphor of the tribe and the pride of lions. And I thought that was really
I'm
well
going
done.
to go down in slippery waters here now. From your words and your descriptions, it seems to me that, say, 99% of the people you deal with are men.
No, I would say closer to 70%. Although
Okay.
in the fitness business, that was actually favoring women.
Mhm.
If I did anything in fitness, it was actually coaching women, powerlifters and strength athletes.
Mhm. Have you
Yeah.
ever had an experience that just seemed to you, well, I use the word failure, but failures usually open doors of opportunity, but that
Yeah.
just didn't turn out right or didn't develop as you expected, or took more time to develop positively for the person involved?
So part of this is, and that's why client selection is important and knowing who you're working with.
Yeah.
Part of this is you must, when we open the hood of your car,
Yeah.
you must be willing to only move forward with the pieces that make sense. And if you're not willing, then I can't help you. And so if you pop the hood and we find that there's broken pieces here and broken pieces there and outdated pieces there, and you say, yeah, but I want it the way it was, well, I've not failed, I just have not been able to impact you. And so I really try to make sure that before we walk through this door, before we open the hood, that you
Right.
understand that we can only move forward with
Right.
the most efficient and best version of this car. Now you get to decide what that means,
Right.
but we
Sure.
need to be ready for change in order for anyone to help
Okay,
you.
so there's the key change. The
Yeah.
key is change. And so someone who comes to you, let's say that's half the battle won, in the sense that they took the first step. Of course, then do you have sort of a screening process when?
I do. If I don't believe you, I will tell you I don't believe you. And this happens frequently
In
where
what
someone
sense? What would I not believe me? Why?
when somebody says I've tried everything and nothing works, and this isn't, I'm
I
special.
see. I see. Of
I'm
course.
special. I have a different circumstance. I have magic between my ears, and there's no way an employee could ever do what I do. Well, I can help you as long as you're willing to give me just enough room to get my fingernail under.
Right.
If I can do that, then I can help you. But if I see a brick wall, I mean, frankly, Claudia, I'm not sure if I could help him or not, but I'm not going to waste my life force
Oh,
on that.
sure. I
Yeah.
get it. I get it.
Yeah.
Jason, this was a very, very interesting conversation. Once again, thanks so much for being an open book and
Thank you,
talking
Claudia.
about values and spirituality and energy and tribes. This is important. Thanks again.
Thank you so
And
much.
again, that book, you got to contact me when you have it black on
ready.
white. Bye-bye.